Oh, I think they're doing a great job. A lot of them are.
Good afternoon, Dwayne. How are you?
Not too bad, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Radio Cayman's Talk Today with Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
But I do have some questions.
There are more questions than answers.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today.
If you're ready to talk, we're willing to listen.
Well, I really enjoy this program today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
May God bless every person.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thank you so much for joining us here in another terrific Thursday edition of Talk Today. Some things just get better because of the starting point. Well, we got a chance now to share with you good friends from the Department of Environment. You want to know more? Well, just stay tuned. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Radio Cayman's Talk Today, the Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program. We ask our listeners to avoid statements or comments which are abusive, derogatory, malicious, or defamatory. Do not use any indecent language or make any statement which is false or misleading. Email talktoday@candw.ky or call 1-800-534-8255.
Courtesy of Flow.
Cayman's #1 network that connects you to your world like never before.
Let your voice be heard. Once again, here's your host, Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon, welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And it's honored to be able to reach out to the excellent resource that is within our civil service and to see, the competence is just right at hand, that strong commitment and the professionalism. So in the studio, Dr. Corey McCoy, Senior Research Officer at the DOE, and his colleague, Mr. Bradley Johnson, joins us. And gentlemen, thank you for, walking over, taking a few minutes out of your day and, putting us in this sort of setting so that as a public, we start to appreciate the work you do day in and day out. As enjoyable as it is, as rewarding, it's something that takes concerted, committed, consistent effort so that we can appreciate now, but for generations to come. And it's like, even building a house, first you need to get the land, get the plans, and get everything. And then, if you're lucky, maybe in a year's time, you'll be able to move in. But even then, there's still continuing work to do. But if you never start it, you may never get there. Well, that's a 1 or 2 or 3 year, I won't say ordeal. But your work, this is continually from generation to generation. So as we talk about the group of more, perhaps first, Dr. McCoy, maybe we'll defer to you. If I could, share with us, you guys have been, collectively with the Department of Environment, with this following this passion for, decades combined.
Yeah, well, thanks a lot for having me on, and good day to all the listeners across the Cayman Islands. My career started actually in 1995. I joined as a young researcher, fresh out of university. And my academic career has grown over the years, working in various aspects of the marine environment. And it's sort of my lifelong history is trying to maintain, manage, and make it better for not only for me and my kids, but future generations. Because we have very little of it compared to the rest of the region or the world in question. And Group Moon has been part of that whole legacy, along with many other projects. But I sort of hold that dear to my heart, because we sort of started very blindsided into the whole aspect of it, and we had to, fortunately, with CIG and thank all the fishermen in the sister islands and stuff for their patience, compliance, and as we did the science, the biology and ecology of this animal, to formulate a management plan for that species, and it is working. I'm proud to say that, and we should all be proud as Caymanians that we achieved something that many others have tried and still stumbling on blocks for that.
And maybe if you would, allow us to understand that, because sometimes I think for some of us, knowing is not just empowering, but it positions us to do something because we understand how it is. You take somebody who wants to change a light bulb, all they need is unscrew it and screw it. But what if it's just that simple? But even if it is, and they don't know how to do that, that may seem to be the most daunting of tasks. And when you show them, they go, oh, that's all it is.
So, in a nutshell, Mother Nature is a very complex web of systems that
most mothers are.
Rightfully, we have to untangle what we can in the best of our knowledge and apply based on that, science-based principles, along with considering all the social aspects, and everything comes together in the end if you work collectively to resolve issues.
Brother, if I might, because I think sometimes it is incredibly important to be able to access external resources, to be able to draw on people maybe for secondment or otherwise to come, into your organization, into your country and make a contribution. But sometimes, what is it? He who feels it knows it. Sometimes when you have it, with the grace of respect for you as an individual and you as a professional, from what I know of, sort of growing up together and, sharing, when we find a passion, that calling, and we answer that, the commitment, the dedication, the passion just becomes not even second nature, it becomes part and parcel. Speak to your father's sort of contribution. What was it? One of the things with natural resources was part of the unit that was within his ambit that would be today's ministries.
Right. Yeah.
And those two words, when they go together, we are probably shying away from that to understand how important that is. Here you are now, close to 30 years later, following that pursuit, contributing to that. It must be telling.
Yeah, no, it's quite special to be in the same, to sort of follow behind in what he started with the marine park systems and his involvement with the Development Natural Resources Unit, or back then. And it was one of those things where nothing really is obvious at first in terms of a career path. I actually went away to school to start to do accounting, believe it or not.
I remember.
Yeah. And quickly realized that wasn't what I was made for or interested in, and had an opportunity and came back, had an opportunity to do an internship with the Natural Resource Unit at the time, and the rest is history, so to speak. And for the NASA Grouper project, I got involved in that in the late 90s, before it sort of when we were actually still researching and collecting the catch data, and that aspect of the project began in 1986 as a response to fishermen sort of coming to us and saying, we notice that the groupers are smaller year after year, we're catching fewer, we're not sure what's going on. So we began a multi-year project to, at that point, try and understand what was happening with the fishery. Landings data and things like that, and built a very thorough picture that these sites were being depleted year after year, and certain things tried to put in place didn't happen for various reasons, and this whole Grouper Moon project that we now refer to is actually a partnership that we have. We've developed with an overseas organization called REEF, the Reef Environmental Education Foundation. That started in 2001 as a result of the sort of rediscovery of one of these spawning NASA grouper spawning sites off the west end of Little Cayman, and there was a huge catch from that resulted in some public outcry about the amount of fish that were wasted, and that was sort of the catalyst that started this whole process. And that was probably the one thing that saved the groupers in the end, was being able to start to get the support to continue and expand the research that we were doing, and the closures that were put in place to allow us to do the science, and ultimately led to understanding that these sites are crucial for the species to continue, and the only way to allow that to happen is to not fish for them during the time that they spawn, which is why there's a closed season now around the Nassau for Nassau grouper specifically, and then catch limits outside of that season.
I want to expound on that, because I think part and parcel of what I'm sensing is there is this sort of cultural nuances and practices and the like that transpire, and maybe not even deliberately. Sometimes we do things that are appreciated. Imagine a small child seeing a nice ripe mango, and I want that mango, but it's shaking the entire tree and all the blossoms or the smaller ones are going. Or maybe taking a stick or something and trying to retrieve it without consciously being selective and as sensible as possible. Just retrieving that mango and not inadvertently, discarding others, or even foolishly not understanding, well, these blossoms, if they survive, become that juicy fruit that you want. So when we break, can we talk more about that, Dr. McCoy and Mr. Johnson, and maybe talk about the seasons, explain why we have them, what's the implication? And could I ask, maybe if it's helpful, there's the grouper, then there's the snapper. Are they similar? Let's get into the biology of the spawning and get people to appreciate that. If you want something today, you got to kind of be willing to put in an effort. But if you want it tomorrow, you got to be willing to sacrifice as well.
Yeah.
All right. The grouper moon. It sounds like a song from the Eagles, huh? Well, it might be CCR that sings it instead. We'll tell you more about it when we come back. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
Families are like branches on a tree. We grow in different directions, yet our roots remain deeply intertwined as one. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, has remained stable, strong, and deeply rooted in the community. The past 2 years have been very difficult, but they have taught all of us the value of family and embracing our loved ones. This 2022, Savannah Pharmacy encourages everyone to get in touch with your roots, embrace your heritage, show some extra love to your neighbor, and make the year a memorable one. Time is precious. Cherish it and those you love. Savannah Pharmacy, always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336 or WhatsApp your Savannah Pharmacy prescription to 929-5045.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Chicken breast, crisp lettuce, sweet mayo on a seeded bun with a little zing. KFC's chicken is not factory-breaded, frozen and refried like the Burger Boys. Customize your KFC zinger and dip it in barbecue sauce.
Wow, now I'm starting to notice you too.
KFC, it's finger-licking good.
Talk today. But I do have some questions.
Talk today. Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon. Welcome back, and thanks for joining us. Thanks to Bradley Johnson and Dr. Croy McCoy for joining with us. Maybe we can revisit, as you talk about the grouper moon. What exactly is it? Why are we doing it? I know we alluded to it, many of us understand it. We can get more information. Well, let's rewind the clock a bit, Bradley.
All right. Well, the grouper moon just really refers to a collaboration, right? And it's a collaboration between our two organizations to study the Nassau grouper reproductive cycle and the Nassau grouper in general, because they gather together or aggregate at specific sites at specific times to spawn. Those are usually around January, February full moons, and that's when all of the reproductive size fish come together in one spot. So they're very vulnerable in that sense because all of the large fish are in one spot at one time. Very easy to catch, And that
they're preoccupied with what they're doing, right?
Right, and that's part of the problem, is because they are is predictable in known places, and they're easy to catch. They've been caught in years past, and it's gotten to the point where the numbers have dropped so much that certain sites just cease to function. There's no more reproductive effort. There's no more fish. So lots of damage can be done when we take from those sites, because that's where that's all the reproductive capacity happens at those sites.
And with that in mind, we know the timing through the research, Dr. McCoy, we understand that traditionally, whether in this culture or others, we know that's a good place to go to get what we want when, because of that knowledge. We've now changed that to say, well, what's the consequence? I mean, we're off limits from going these places at these times.
Yeah, the season is closed for 5 months of the year, 1st of December through the end of April. And that's the time span that for our stock, that spawning can happen. And though there is, regionally, it happens some at different times. It's usually after the full moon in January. And it happens for 3 nights. That they're called mass spawners, where they release their eggs with the gametes from the male and fertilize it. And as Bradley quite rightfully mentioned earlier, we've observed it takes a certain amount in a given population for all the cues to be there for this event to happen. And fortunately, we were, at least in Lower Cayman, that we had a stock that was large enough for that to be viable, for that to occur. And one thing I want to also stress to is the fact that this was mentioned a long time ago in the WIC-State report in the 70s that oceanic islands have to be careful about their own stocks of marine animals, or predominantly fish, that they can be self-recruiting predominantly. And our research have proven that. I mean, not only just for Little Cayman where we did the work, but also spreading the larvae and young ones to Brac and Gran.
Is that a physical intervention on your part to spread the larvae, or that through the currents?
No, we use static drifters that follow the larvae for its duration. See, once released, it's 24
through the currents.
Yeah.
For the larvae hatch out within 24 hours, and then it's oceanic for like 35 days or so. And all of our data has showed us that some go to the other islands, and some stay at home. And this is something that is unexplainable. It's just Mother Nature with the work we did in that area. That the currents are pretty erratic leading up to the spawn. On the night of spawn, eddies form, and to keep the larvae near shore, which is some years, which is very amazing.
Have we ever looked into sort of like repopulation efforts where we would take physically, collect the larvae and then disperse it either around the same island or across even the region, but across our other islands? Have we done that to help with the repopulation?
No, we haven't, but that's a very difficult thing. With larvae, the work we've been doing with that is not only following it and seeing where it gets dispersed to, but we've looked. Because climate change should be on the forefront of anybody's mind in the Cayman Islands, and that also affects our marine life also. And we've looked at fertilization rates, and also raising a larvae in a lab, seeing what temperatures mortality happen at and best survival. Because one thing we noticed was the pulse recruitment we got on our reefs coincided with a year of lower temperatures for survivability. So we take, like this year, we're collecting eggs, put them in a lab, seeing how they survive at different temperatures. And as we, it has in the past, the work we've done has pretty grave consequences as we temperature rise globally.
So given the time in the end of, or in January, can we infer then that the cooler the temperature, the greater the viability probability?
There is an optimum temperature for anything,
right?
Any animal to survive. And as the temperatures rise due to climate change, you know, Mother Nature doesn't move as fast with acclimation or.
So we got one country, 3 islands. We see the distance between, you know, Grand Cayman and the sister islands a little bit more than between the sister islands and themselves, right? So are we seeing a difference in aggregation as we look at the count, the sizes on Little Cayman versus the BRAC versus Grand Cayman?
Yeah, there's distinct differences between the populations. Now, keep in mind that Nassau grouper are reef fish, right?
Okay.
So they live on the reef, they stay on the reef, they don't swim across deep oceanic bodies of water to get from one island or country to another. So all of the fish on Little Cayman that show up at these sites are just from Little Cayman, likewise for the BRAC and for Grand as well.
Okay.
And the populations are of different sizes. So we see a very, very small population on Grand Cayman. It's quite difficult to get an assessment of the size of it, to be honest with you, because the sites are very unique as well. The spawning site on the west end of Little Cayman is in about anywhere from 90 to 110 feet of water. So it's within, you know, scuba range, so we can get in and get good videos, get good to document the entire process. The BRAC is a bit deeper, about 140, 130, somewhere around there.
Max.
So it's a bit deeper, and then Grand Cayman is more like 150. So it's hard to get that information, but we know that the BRAC is a bit small, is a little bit bigger than Grand, but Little Cayman is by far the largest population of spawning Nassau groupers that we know of in the region.
Right.
Not just in the 3 islands, but regionally.
As I was looking at my notes and just looking at what I transferred, I was asking, and I appreciate you helping us, because I think more often than not, when we say, you know, the Cayman Islands, we may think, oh, it's a small body, even though consciously we understand the depth of the water between us and how fast it is. But that distinct difference, even within one country, but within a small area, is significant. I'm also inclined to ask about the potential threats. Are we seeing not only the local populace fishing and overfishing, but I think back to the allegation of the longliners in the past on the 12-mile bank with the pelagic fish, for instance. Is that potentially another challenge to the impact on the resource that these offshore fishing?
The 12-mile banks is within our territorial waters, but as you can imagine, it's hard to police. And, and we don't have an assessment of the population there.
Okay.
So we don't even know if they still aggregate there. You know, they have in the past.
Yes.
But talking about, you know, population growth, you know, we've seen Little Cayman grow from 1,500 fish after the extraction in 2002. To right now it's between 7,000 and 8,000, but the lag time for seeing a response in the population was, you know, almost 10 years, and that's where I mentioned earlier about the patience and compliance as we try to figure this out. So
we've gone from taking 1,500.
No, we've gone from having 1,500 left.
Yeah.
At the end of 2 years of very intense removal efforts, 2001, 2002. And that population was very stagnant for a very long time. It's grown over the years to a point where it's between 7,000 and 8,000 now. But one of the very interesting things we've observed is that the recruitment pulse that Dr. McCoy was referring to, that was a very unique and significant event that happened 1 year. And what we were able to see from the population data that we gather year after year after year is that we, and also the length measurements that we capture as well, we could see that when we had the strong recruitment pulse of juveniles show up on the reef in 2012, 5 year later in 2017, what we saw on the site was a huge increase in the amount of juveniles fish that was there. So while we may see spawning happening every year, and we may think that there's reproduction going on, the ability to actually draw those fish back to the site is very, very, very sporadic, and it might not it doesn't happen every year, and it may be that we get these huge increases from one event every 10 years. So we don't have an understanding of that, which is one of the reasons why it's so important that we leave these sites alone.
Yeah. So with that, I mean, Little Cayman may be a little bit easier to police, maybe a little bit easier to study and the like. But if we come over now to Grand Cayman, and if we've seen the positive growth over 10 years, it's just a blink of an eye, not even that in some instances. Have we seen this corresponding impact on Grand Cayman, or the reverse?
I'll start with BRAC. I mean, BRAC was around 500, and again, it took like over 10 years to respond to management efforts and stuff. And right now, that population is between 3,000 and 4,000. So we know what we're doing working.
Okay,
and
so we see, yeah.
And Grand Cayman is a whole different ballgame. But as Bradley mentioned earlier, assessing the populations is a bit difficult. We managed to in 2012 and some in 2018. And it doesn't seem to respond as well. And it's possibly due to extraction still happening. Because in the Sister Islands, we have a lot. The fishermen are very compliant, and they follow the rules. And, it's very different from down here, where it's, we've been in this debacle for quite some time with the Easton and Coxon Bank, the aggregation there. However, due to the, as we mentioned earlier, of the exchange of larvae between islands, we are now seeing some smaller recruits on island. They're 3 or 4 year olds, and any diver or snorkeler will tell you that. This is probably the first time they've seen Nassau groupers on the reef. And, my hope is that they will comply down here as well as they did in the Sister Islands, because they're missing an opportunity to resource. And what I also want to stress is the fact that restrictions are not in place to stop you from fishing. Restrictions are in place to ensure that you have fish to catch, outside of the spawning season. Because if you take the mothers going to the maternity ward, you're not going to have a population, and that's, plain and simple. So, moving forward, I would like to see Grand Cayman as productive as the Sister Islands. But we're not there yet. I mean, it's been a stumbling block for years.
So as we go into the break, are we at a place where the Nassau group in particular is threatened to the extent that we could see it as an endangered species, as a place where we may no longer see it if we're out snorkeling or trying to catch it?
Regionally, yes.
Regionally,
definitely. It's still a critically endangered species. I mean, we are in a very unique position here because we've been able to, our population has been able to grow, and it's something that isn't happening anywhere else. If we continue to manage our spawning sites productively and efficiently, we can continue to see Nassau grouper on our reefs for years to come. But it's a delicate balance, right?
Yeah, from a social perspective and a ecological perspective. But just to add to that, people know about all the spags at Belize. There's over, I think it's 15 or 16 of them. They, there's a term you use, hyperstability in a population, where you can fish and catch, but it keeps being reduced, and you're still catching the same amount. But all of a sudden, the population is so low, you're not catching. And they recognize that. And from 1993, they shut all of their FSAs, or their spawning aggregations, down. Since 93, and they have a huge enforcement problem, and they've not recovered since. Many other countries have. We, as a country now, is a shining light of hope that they can follow suit or follow our model and recover, because no one else has done it, and that's something to really be proud of. I mean, Cuba has not recovered, though they're all, there's still some population there, but you can look at all of the historical aggregation sites around the region, and there's no recovery in 50 years.
What does that do for today? But as you shared, what does that do for future generations? So let's pause and take a break. When we come back, let's talk about the breeders and maturity. Let's talk about catch limits. Let's talk about some of the stuff so that people get a perspective. And then I think there's a presentation coming up over a couple of days that as a populace we may be able to tune in. So all right, Dr. Croy McCoy and Mr. Bradley Johnson from the Department of Environment are our guests. Okay, so Susan's going to sing the lyrics to the Group of Moon song. Yeah, she will, trust me. Not, publicly, but she'll sing it. All right, stay tuned for Talk Today.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
Freedom, Cayman Brack. Freedom, Little Cayman. Soft breezes, blue waters, no traffic. Unwind and rejuvenate your mind, body, and soul. Sister Island Staycations, a taste of freedom. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
Families are like branches on a tree. We grow in different directions, yet our roots remain deeply intertwined as one. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, has remained stable, strong, and deeply rooted in the community. The past 2 years have been very difficult, but they have taught all of us the value of family and embracing our loved ones. This 2022, Savannah Pharmacy encourages everyone to get in touch with your roots, embrace your heritage, show some extra love to your neighbor, and make the year a memorable one. Time is precious. Cherish it and those you love. Savannah Pharmacy, always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336 or WhatsApp your Savannah Pharmacy prescription to 929-5045.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waging to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Yeah. Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for joining us. And they say a little learning is a dangerous thing. You imagine if you are attentive, you ask informed questions, and you're a critical, thinker, but an active listener. How much more we can learn. We're very grateful for our guests here for sharing with us all the time. And today, in particular, Dr. McCoy and Mr. Johnson for giving us a perspective. Because what we're doing now, this restraint, this sacrifice that we are prepared to take on, is very much part and parcel of who we are. We saw our parents and their parents do it, not just with subsistence farming, but to sacrifice so that we can have a better life. Not just comfort, but also a quality of life. We do the same, our children will be better positioned, and we will have honored our parents' sacrifice and shown respect to our children. So with the Nassau group, is it maybe why I ask this and come back? Is it just the grouper, the Nassau grouper, or are we looking at other groupers? And if it's only the Nassau grouper, why that one specifically as opposed to some of the others?
The Nassau grouper has always been the iconic species of the whole region. Across.
Put a little black dot right there.
So that being said, it was a huge fishery back in the day when I guess the whole region population was low, but in their countries. But as population rise, demand rise for fish or protein and stuff, and that has led to the detriment of these animals because across the region, again, as Bradley said, their timing for spawn is predictable. The whole reproductive stock is in one spot, and it's like fishing in a barrel. You got pregnant females and male there that are hungry. So you can just sit there and wipe the whole entire population out over a short period of time. And that being said, we're also working on the other groupers, but again, it takes time, effort, and science base so that we can also have management plans for these other species and have them on a reef, because they're so ecologically important for the survival of everything.
And I'll ask this, I mean, it's great to have, evidence-based inquiries, but even anecdotally, if we would talk to our parents, or we who are a certain age may remember, going out fishing, going out snorkeling on the reef, and we go today versus when we believe we may recall going 10, 15, some of us 30 years or more ago, and we could say, well, I remember when our fathers and our parents would say, well, boy, when I was a little boy, you had to be careful where you walk and you step on them. It was so plentiful. It would be obvious that there's a decrease, there's a significant demand and a threat to the resource. You, Dr. McCoy, talk about counting. I don't know about you. I count my marbles sometimes, and after I get that certain number, I go, but did I count that one already? Put it over there. And my marbles are static. Your fish are moving about the place.
Yeah, it's a common question that people have when I socialize in public and stuff. How do you count all these fish? And
do you give them names? John, I counted you really. Come on.
Actually, on that subject, we're into AI now, where it's every fish face is just same as me, you, or Bradley.
Good looking, you mean?
No, but it's distinguishable.
So you're saying I'm good looking? Come on, he's your co-worker, man.
So what we're doing with AI now is called facial recognition with software.
Or is it facial recognition?
Facial recognition, yeah, that too.
I just teased.
And we take photos of fish face, and then we run them through the computer, and it'll pick out each one, because every fish is individual. So that's an area that we're moving into now. That's so that it's much easier work for us in one sense. But that is a moving target as we develop it better, and that way we can follow fish through the years. But getting back to count fish, and in simple terms, we use these temporary tags that I think they're developed for marlins, just low. We insert them into the skin, and they come off after a while. So if we just, to make it simple, if we tag 100 fish, and then we go back surveying and count 50 fish, and there's one tag amongst that 50 fish, then you count another 50 fish, and there's one tag, and that's 5,000 fish. And that method has been around since the 50s and 60s, so it's a tried and proven method. But we also do the behavior of the Nassau grouper throughout the day is very different. It's like, they coon up in a big ball in the afternoons, and as the sun comes up the next day, they slowly dissipate, and you get a long band, thin band. But we also video that whole band and try to count every fish in that. And we do several every day. We do that whole band, and then we get grad students to sit at a computer and count them all. And we get an average of the population in between those numbers. And now that we're moving on with AI, we have a good grip on the population status.
I don't want to get too much into the AI now for different reasons, but you seem to have supported that with the physical thing. But two things. One, what is the level of confidence in the AI, given that we are increasingly understand that AI, relative to facial recognition amongst certain segments of our society, isn't as accurate. There is a built-in bias in its recognition of certain people, relative to others, so that the probability of being misidentified using AI for facial recognition is higher if you're a certain ethnicity or a certain skin tone than you are if you're not. I don't know if groupers have that same problem, but look all like to me.
Well, it's to our advantage that they have pigmentation, as you know, with the coloration, and that is very distinguishable. So in one sense, it works in our favor. So we're very confident in that.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, it's just it's the patterns
Yeah.
The patterns that are on their faces is what it picks up. But it's still in the it's very early stages right now.
Yeah.
So it's we don't have the sort of ability to say yes, this is of 100% or 90% confidence.
I think it's evolving from the little level. Yeah. I mean, I was thinking of NASA group on zebras, or zebras, depending on who you are.
But we do give them names. I mean, there's some that we call. There's this particular one that we call Phantom, and he had one side of his face was totally black, dark, and the other side was white. And then you had this one called Hula. She had a complete circle around the middle of her the body.
Unique colorations.
Yeah. And that's the beautiful part. I mean, I don't think we engage in the water to the extent that we should. And when we do, even on our walks through the dikes, to use our senses. Did you hear that? What is that sound? Oh, that's a parrot. Yeah, but does it have a? Yeah.
Well, that's one of the things that we've been trying to do. In the schools is what I found is that if you get the kids to go out and just observe what they see, write down, tell me how many sea eggs you saw on your snorkel, how many fish, what kind of fish, did you see this and did you see that? And as soon as you go in the water to look for things, it's a completely different appreciation. I didn't see this, I didn't see that. When you start thinking about what you're seeing, it's easier to appreciate what's there and what's not there and become more aware of it.
I appreciate that invitation, that challenge. So we got to tell all the teachers now that the homework assignment for the weekend to send all their children out to the beach and into the water, and they got a response for going and record what they see, and then come back and do a book report for Monday. All the other subjects are just out the window. This is what we're working on.
But, with the management of anything, you have to have a good grip on the population status.
Exactly.
That's the first start you do.
Yeah, but it is true because, I mean, when I was in school, in high school, I didn't have any sort of, oceanography or marine. I went away to the university and, it was just like, this is amazing, right? So I think that's one of the things that we're trying to encourage back into the classroom is, let's appreciate what we have here and let's develop that awareness of the ocean and the environment.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that. I was going to ask during the break, but I'll say it publicly, in that we know people from different universities, not just in the U.S., but even other farther field, come in here to study, to go into the amongst our reefs and the like and work on their thesis, for whatever. So even freshmen in high school, as it were, as opposed to PhD students, all across the gamut. But yet, within our own shores, we are probably not actively promoting, maybe openly discouraging, seeing with our farmers. So, at some point, if I could ask of you, as we close our discussion, when we return after the break, to make that appeal to our parents to encourage our children into the marine sciences, to look at how we can impact the environment around us in a positive way. But let's return and talk about maturity and breeding and seasons and the like, so people get an appreciation for where we are and what we did.
Just to end that, I would add that the conservation starts at home around a dinner table and in the schools, and then when kids are young, if they get a firm base and grip on that, they carry that throughout their lives. So it's very important that we bring that to the forefront within the whole system.
We instill that interest around our dinner tables. Hopefully we still have those in our houses with our TV on. But that's nurtured in schools, so that if that partnership isn't there, that's just where I'm at, where I think I'm relative to learning and knowledge and sharing. So you guys inspire me to greatness. Let's pause, take that news break. When you come back, we'll see where our investment takes this wonderful return. So stay tuned for Talk Today.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman. Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
Government reported 357 new cases of COVID-19 in the Cayman Islands Wednesday night, with 19 of those in the Sister Islands. 9 COVID-19 patients were in the hospital as of midnight on Wednesday. 3 of those are new admissions. In international news, Russia on Thursday sharply raised the stakes in its dispute with the West over Ukraine, with a top diplomat refusing to rule out a Russian military deployment to Cuba and Venezuela if tensions with the United States mount. The deputy foreign minister who led the Russian delegation in Monday's talks with the U.S. in Geneva said he could neither confirm nor exclude the possibility of Russia sending military assets to Cuba and Venezuela if the talks fail and U.S. pressure on Russia mounts. 2 brand new COVID-19 pills that were supposed to be an important weapon against the pandemic in the U.S. are in short supply and have played little role in the fight against the Omicron wave of infections. The problem is that production is not yet at full strength and that the pill considered to be far superior, Pfizer's, takes 6 to 8 months to manufacture. And Earth simmered to the 6th hottest year on record in 2021, according to several new released temperature measurements. And scientists say the exceptionally hot year is part of a long-term warming trend that shows hints of accelerating. 2 U.S. science agencies and a private measuring group released their calculations for last year's global temperature on Thursday, and all said it wasn't far behind ultra-hot 2016 and 2020. Those are your latest headlines. I'm Shanda Gallego.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon, welcome back, and thanks for joining us, and thanks too to Dr. Corey McCoy and Mr. Bradley Johnson over at the Department of Environment. I know sometimes in the country, environmental health, Department of Environment, no, they're all government agencies, but very distinct, all right? Yeah. I think? Yes. Very much so.
Yes.
No, we all know the difference these days.
A bit like chalk and cheese.
I was thinking more like dark chocolate and whatever the other stuff is. Much different. You're thinking the same thing, huh? I hear you, Global. No, but the notion that maybe even for recreational purposes, to be able to swim and to see different fish would be very rewarding, therapeutic. But for sustainability, for our survival even, not just a quality of life, but survival, having healthy reefs, understanding the impact that we as people have on it because we're taking certain things from it without understanding that those things impact. I like your analogy with, the mothers in the maternity ward and the like. So we know when they spawn primarily. We know some of the things. So we've put in a season. It's closed, you said, from the 1st of December to the end of April.
Yes.
What are the consequences for taking the grouper in that time?
Well, it's a breach of the National Conservation Act.
Okay.
And so it's there are fines and loss of vessels and stuff that would come into effect then.
Okay, and then like everything, there has to be proper enforcement and vigilance. So we have that.
Yes.
And the marine enforcement officers have the same policing powers as the uniform guys that we see on the roads and about. So for the public, they're one and the same in terms of under the law with their arrestable powers and the like.
And it's not just our conservation officers that are responsible for enforcing it. The police are as well,
right?
As well as the Cayman Islands Coast Guard that's just been recently formed.
There it is.
They're huge. We work very closely with them, and they're very supportive of the Marine Conservation and the National Conservation Act. So we thank them and the police for their support.
All right. So other side of the 1st of December to the 30th of April, for that short window, we can then catch and consume.
Yes.
Are there limits? I know conch and lobster have limits. Mangoes should have the same, but are there limits?
Yeah, there's a slot size because you try not to take the very young and you don't take the whole reproductive stock you got.
Okay.
So it's 16 to 24 inches, and each individual is allowed 5 per day.
Okay.
And that's the whole strategy behind. I don't call it behind the management plan restrictions. The fact that to allow people to be able to do that, and so that's the whole purpose. That this is for Caymanians. Not
future
just,
generations.
Yeah, future generations, that we can still enjoy this resource. So you got, the rest of the year, actually, 7 months that you can do that.
Right.
Yeah, so the whole idea is to be able to catch them outside the season. I mean, that's one of the things that, people talk about, you can't eat grouper, but you can eat grouper, you just can't eat it when they're spawning. And it's always about understanding what you're eating at the time, right? So it's more about the timing of it, not necessarily you can't eat it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we, as you said, I'm thinking to packaging of certain things that we buy. This thing was responsibly harvested. This was, all these other things, and they sound good and they may be true, but we're conscious to doing that because as a consumer, we believe we're doing a good thing, we're going to feel good. Why not the same with the grouper? So with that, then, is there a maturity age? You said, obviously protect the older breeders, protect the young, but does the grouper like a person, like other animals, need to get to a certain age and size before they start to reproduce?
Yeah, it takes 5 to 7 years for maturity because they're long-lived species, and actually the longest age one was actually done by Phil Bush and Dave Lane out of in Canada Fisheries, and it was 29 years old. So they live a long time. That's why they slow growth to maturity and long-lived. And so, and again too, the large body size. Fish 16 inches versus a mature breeder that's 24 or greater than that, produce almost 10 times more eggs than that. So that's what you want to nourish.
If I could ask, I mean, and I'm not a biologist and I don't pretend to be one on the radio, but we know with some species, human in particular, after a certain age, unless you're Sarah, you understand that you're no longer childbearing, presumably according to what man has dictated, right? So with the grouper, that 25-year-old might be more productive than the 18-year-old.
Yeah, and not just more productive, but exponentially more eggs, okay. And also from a genetic standpoint, better quality eggs.
So it gets better with everything.
Exactly, it gets better with age. So that's one of the reasons why we try to protect the largest breeders, right? Because those are the ones that are going to give you the best reproductive input to your system. So that's
best genetic stock in one sense, and the fact that they're not on time clock, but they're
you should. That's song
reproduction. So it's in our favor in that we protect these large animals.
I can see them.
And if for more information on this and all of our national conservation laws, we have an app that people can download. If they search for it in the Play Store or on the iTunes Store, just look for Cayman DOE, and they can download our app. It has a very useful interactive map, and you can turn on location services, see where you are, and it also has all of the rules and sizes and everything else for all of our species and catch limits and different things.
I commend you for that, because I think we as a people want to consciously make good decisions. Ignorance, they say, is not necessarily bliss, but sometimes we inadvertently do things without appreciating. We have I call them marine parks. There are places we can fish, the places we can't fish. So other than fishing within the season, so anything outside of the 1st of December and the 30th of April, we're good. Doesn't matter where we're fishing in terms of once we're not in those areas. That the grouper is the grouper, and if you fish here or there from the shore or otherwise, it's okay to catch it and in whatever form.
In the correct area.
In the correct
geographic area.
Yeah.
Okay. And that app Bradley just mentioned defines all of that.
Okay. Are there particular areas that are off limits any time of year, whether season or no season?
For the Nassau grouper, the spawning aggregation overlay zones are closed for any take at this point as well. Generally, there are the environmental zone, which is just around the central mangrove and Little Sound in Grand Cayman. That was one area that no in-water activity, and no removal is allowed to happen in. And there are different restrictions for different areas because, we have our new marine park systems that were just put in place, and that's one of the reasons why we needed to update our app, and that shows all of the new marine park zones, marine reserves, the line fishing zones, no diving overlays, things like that. That shows all of those zones and allows you to explore and figure out where, and it overlays it over an aerial photograph of all the islands, so you can see the land references and stuff as well.
Okay. Well, gents, we do have a caller join us. Dr. McCoy and Bradley Johnson are our guests. Hey, good afternoon and welcome. Thanks for calling.
Yeah, some important information that's being disseminated there, and I wonder if there might be an app that I'm not talking about. I think I was talking about is just on the common terrain, that a lot of this information can be disseminated, because I think there's a lot of people in the community who don't know anything, about basically what you're talking about. And you want to ask, anybody can answer that?
Yes, we have quite a bit of information on our website as well, doe.ky, and we have some links to some documentaries that were produced in order to try and get a lot of this information out. So that's a great resource to start with. It has specific information about the projects that we're involved with, and links to some documentaries as well.
Well, one other question: has any surveys been done on the sprat or goggle eyes or the fries?
No, not at this point, sir.
And you mentioned, I think, an app that showed you basically different features.
Yes, it's the new Department of Environment app that shows all of our marine park systems. If on your smartphone, you just need to search in the app stores for Cayman DOE. And there's also a link on our website that takes you directly to those two pages in each of the respective app stores.
Are they specific locations given? The coordinates and so forth on the map, on the app?
It does not specifically list the coordinates, but it does show you all of the maps and where they are. And with the features of the smartphone, if you turn on your GPS or your location services, it shows you where you are on the map. So it puts a little dot on the map to show you your location. So if you're driving around in a boat and you're not sure what zone you're in, you turn on your location services, you can see what zone you're in, and then you can tap the zone and get all the information about that zone in there.
Okay. Are the high heads featured?
The aerial photography is not that detailed, so you'll have to have some knowledge
local
of the
knowledge.
area. Local knowledge is important.
So in other words, if I'm not there tomorrow evening with my striker and my glass, I'll still have to
Yep.
Yes, sir. Don't rely on your phone for that.
Yeah.
Here's the thing: I think you've got people in the community who once in a while would like to get out there, and some of them probably don't even know how to access your app and bring down the Google location thing. So and I think that a lot of this information should be in a recurring theme. When I say recurring theme, daily, because I think there's a lot of what you could call infringement on what is supposed to be not happening, and they probably don't know the difference whether they're infringing or whether they're not.
Yes, sir. Well, we do try to put a lot of information. Well, we try to put information out as often as possible, and our public relations and education officer is very active trying to inform the public about not just this program, but all of the other aspects that the department works on. So we're very actively putting out information on a daily basis about many different projects that we're working on now.
But are you mainly focusing that on the IT in the IT sphere?
At the moment, yes, a lot of the stuff is going out on social media and places like that.
But looking at this from a standpoint, you think that somebody's going to go to social media and look for this stuff? The folks who are infringing on all these various regulations or things that have been created?
That's a good point, but at the same time, we're trying to put out as much information to make it as easily available to people, whether they choose to not look for it. That's sort of beyond our control to a certain extent.
I think there's a great need to use the common feeder that would feed these people this information,
right?
In order to get them up to scratch this and not be doing what they shouldn't be doing as far as the marine ecology is concerned.
So you would then highly recommend the use of, say, radio in particular and other public education awareness, whether in schools or forum, in order to ensure that the information is not just timely but consistently in the public domain?
Definitely. I mean, the schools, that would be a prime source, because the kids go home and take it to their fathers that the family only came here, 6 months ago, and they go home and take the information there. So I think it's got to be a multi-pronged approach to educating the Cayman Island populace on, what's good and what's not bad about caring about our environment.
Right. I think your points are certainly well-founded, and I know DOU taken on board. Any final thoughts, sir?
No, I would just like to know, how many schools got lives is
I like the way to find out.
Between the August Point and the Eastern.
Yep. There you go. Mr. Johnson?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that one of the things, especially when a lot of the information comes out first, we have a lot of physical brochures, and we've done a lot of releases. We've been on this show quite a number of times, talk about different things. We've put a lot of things in the press as well, so our outreach is definitely multifaceted. On the sort of day-to-day things, a lot more is on social media, but we do utilize all of the different avenues to put the information out there.
All right. Hey, thanks very much, sir.
Yeah, I think there's a lot that's going on where people are sweeping up these little fish, the croc-pilots, the sagas, and the other things. And I think they're very important to the marine ecology.
Without question.
And it's not, I've not heard anything specific to that very aspect of all these little fish that maybe on a little shoal 10 feet from shore.
Well, those all would be under 8 inches, and there's a minimum size of 8 inches for any fish that can be kept. So if they're catching fish under 8 inches, that's against the law.
Right. All right. Thank you, sir, and with great respect of all. We're going to just take this break a little bit late, but maybe it's not like church, better late than never, better never than late. All right, when we come back, we'll conclude our discussion, so stay tuned.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette, brought to you by the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your Sister Islands.
As with much of history, historical facts tend to be passed along via the older folks and stories. One of the fullest early accounts of the settlement of Cayman Brac was given by H.W. Rutty, J.P. in 1908, which was gathered from the oldest residents. The first settlements were made in 1833, when 3 families bearing the names Rich, Foster, and Scott from Grand Cayman went to the Brac. Although others came from Grand Cayman and Jamaica, the present population in 1908 was composed of descendants of those 3 first families. Of the traditional founding families, the Fosters and Ryans have the fullest genealogical and oral records.
Information from this historical vignette was sourced from Founded Upon the Seas, A History of the Cayman Islands and Their People by Michael Creighton and the New History Committee.
Radio Cayman is pleased to feature this special Sister Islands historical vignette brought to you by the Ministry of Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands.
Wouldn't it have been grand if you had purchased land 30 years ago? It may not be 2020, but a perfect vision has never been more clear. Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, poised for growth with an eye on the future. Your land, your history, your future. Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
Families are like branches on a tree. We grow in different directions, yet our roots remain deeply intertwined as one. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, has remained stable, strong, and deeply rooted in the community. The past 2 years have been very difficult, but they have taught all of us the value of family and embracing our loved ones. This 2022, Savannah Pharmacy encourages everyone to get in touch with your roots, embrace your heritage, show some extra love to your neighbor, and make the year a memorable one. Time is precious. Cherish it and those you love. Savannah Pharmacy, always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336 or WhatsApp your Savannah Pharmacy prescription to 929-5045.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners' participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon, and thanks so much for joining us. And a few minutes to continue our discussion as we talk more to Dr. Croy McCoy and his colleague, Mr. Bradley Johnson, over at DOE. And maybe as I listen to you, this approach to the Nassau group in particular can apply with the same level of zeal to almost anything, or whether we're on land and trying to be mindful of our impact relative to the groundwater supply, how we perhaps grow some of the foods or how we even harvest them, to our approach to sustainability in so many other ways. So the examples in one can apply in other areas. I commend the concerted, consistent effort and the dividends over the decades. I'm also aware that there is an initiative, and I think the public can log into it. Is it the 19th or the 18th through, Mr. Johnson? There's a session, an information session that's being shared.
Yeah, these are actually what we call the live feed sessions or education sessions, and we started this back in 2012 as a way to get the message of the spawning aggregations into the classrooms, and we actually developed an entire education program specifically around this. We held teacher workshops where we would help the teachers understand the education material, and they would actually share it with the children ahead of time so that the children understood what they were looking at, and then we actually would do a broadcast from the site where one of the divers actually went in the water, had a headset on, auger mask, so he could actually talk to the students, and we would basically have a Skype call or a Zoom call between the diver that's in the water looking at stuff and the children in the classroom, and they would get to ask questions. So that we started that back in 2012, and so it continues every year. And the 3 live events that are coming up next week are basically 3 broadcasts from Little Cayman, where you will be able to sort of log in and watch the interactions and discussions going on with the classrooms and the children, and the scientists that are over there working on it now, and Croy and some of the other colleagues from the Department of Environment will be over there as well, along with colleagues from REEF and some of our partner institutes. So this is a good opportunity for the public to see sort of what's going on there on a regular basis.
For the comfort of our classrooms or offices or wherever, we can see this thing live.
Yes.
And I've made a note to print the flyer so that I have it to hand to remind people. But if you know it offhand, because it'll be a good way, I'm thinking as you share that, to having the opportunity to have seen the corresponding. You know, I wasn't there in person. I didn't have to go dive in to watch it, but you know, I saw it, and then I remember seeing it on the video after, and I thought, wouldn't it have been nice to watch it then and there? And so you've given us an opportunity, Dr. McCoy?
Yeah, you know, that is from the, like Bradley mentioned, live feed straight to classrooms, to right into your house, you know, to the public, and it gives an idea of the underwater world and stuff. So we started out in 2012, and we actually started trying to do it right on the aggregation in itself, but it proved very difficult with currents, depth, and getting everything to work. So we sort of haven't totally abandoned the idea, but we do it on Bloody Bay at the moment. The last couple of years that we've been doing that. But on a final note, it's heartwarming when I go home to the Sister Islands to talk to, whether it's the young or the old fishermen that are able to catch Nassau grouper in the open seasons. You know, some of the elders will tell me, you know, they haven't done this since they were a kid. Wow. You know, from the shoreline, and you know, they are part of the success story, because it was not possible without their, you know, restraint, compliance, and you know, patience as we work together to achieve this goal. And the Nassau Grouper's success story is not just regional, it's global, because everyone looks at us now as the leaders and the management of that and the surrounded the grouper species. So that being said, you know, kudos to them for that, and I would like to thank them holistically, because it's heartfelt when we all succeed.
And they've seen it in their lifetimes, so it is possible. That's the beautiful part, you know. I know we have a caller, Mr. Johnson, but before we end today, I want you to remind us of those live feeds. So kind of like a little cliffhanger. Don't go away just yet. You know, we're going to tell you when you can do that. But let's take this caller first. Hey, good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Afternoon, sir. How are you today?
Good afternoon.
I'm doing great. And you doing all right?
Blessed, man. I mean, I would tell you what I was up to earlier, but then I would be kissing and tell. No, just kidding.
All right. Yeah, nice weather conditions, man, you know?
Oh, you wouldn't believe it.
It's smashing. That's correct. I got actually two questions. Number one, in the West Bay area, are Caymanians allowed any place into the West Bay area to set a fish pot? That's number one. And the hard question that I would like to have a real answer is, these dive boats that go in the night, what kind, if any, of monitoring does the officials, people in authority, have to see when they come in that they're not bringing in lobsters off season and below the size and so on? So I will hang up and listen to your panel. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
All right, with regards to his first question, there is if and again going back to the new app that we have, DOE, Cayman DOE, in the West Bay area from Norwest Point up to all around the north side, there is a large open zone there where fish pots can be set, licensed fish pots, and you can contact the Department of Environment for more information about getting licenses for the fish pots and things like that. With regards to the question about the dive boats going out in the evenings. Our conservation officers, as well as the police, have the ability to search and seize any vessel, boat or car that they suspect is in violation of or violating any of the laws. So the ability is there to police all of these things if the suspicion is there.
Mm-hmm. Again, it comes back to perhaps as Mr. McCoy, Dr. McCoy shared earlier. Those fishermen in particular on the sister islands have seen the importance of, I like the word, exercising restraint so that they can see the benefit for themselves, but for future generations, as they pay deference to the practice that they enjoyed as a child with their parents and grandparents. Hopefully across all 3 islands, we will do that collectively so that we not only enjoy it just casually and recreationally, but if it's a source of, our protein, if it's the source of our sustenance in terms of our livelihoods, that we harvest responsibly. You don't cut down the tree to get the fruit. At least I don't think so. You may prune it somewhat, but I don't know. Short people sometimes have good insight.
It's sort of like that. We've been pushing respect our spags, and that wraps it in a nutshell, in the sense that we have rules and regulations that we know work, and as long as we respect those and comply and show restraint.
Well, when you referenced the breeders earlier, you said the older, the more mature the grouper, the better the whole production, and the more it is. Kind of takes me back to our song, good old working old thing better than you think at a time. Just a thought, Susan, like,
a good working old thing better than a young thing.
Is that how you go? Let me hear it. But it's true, huh?
Yeah, I mean, fish, they whether it's the grouper, groupers or snappers or whatever, as they get larger, they produce more eggs, and it doesn't stop till the animal is dead. So, unlike humans, the reproductive cycle continues.
Makes me want let me focus. So, Mr. Johnson, for those parents, teachers, and just the general enthusiasts, we have a couple of days over which we can see it. Yeah. Times and places and how to log in, and I will try my best to ask Susan to remind her to remind me, so we can tell people.
All right, January 18th to 20th at 10:30 a.m. And there is a Reef Grouper Moon Project Education YouTube channel, and I believe those links are in the social media posts, and we'll make sure that's on our website for people to click and get access to.
Yeah, man. And I'll get you to forward that to me so that we have it handy on our site. Dr. McCoy, as we close our discussion, sir, any final thoughts you may want to leave with our listeners?
I can't say this as much as I always say. I'm thanking the fishermen and the sister islands for all their help and knowledge, because I learned a lot of that in the beginning from them, and their restraint and compliance and everything else as we move along with their management plan for this particular species. And along with the fact that we should, across all 3 islands, respect our spag during this 5-month period, for the betterment, not only for them, but, for the country as a whole. And the fact that, things, I hope Grand Cayman at some point reaches the status that the sister islands have, and that's only achievable with them complying and working with us to achieve that goal.
One hand washes the other, and if we work hand in hand, we'll find that the success is not just shared, it's enjoyed, and the sacrifice has been certainly rewarded.
Yeah, I mean, we do this not for us, we do this for our people.
Yeah.
The management plans we develop, the rules and regulations that we develop, and the laws that we develop is just so that we manage and use this resource in a sustainable way.
Well, just thanks very much, and Mr. Johnson, to you and your colleague, Dr. McCoy, and the rest of the team, for the great work you're doing. We see the efforts. Just trust that those are people we can, appreciate it just for today and future generations. platform is always here, to come on and
Just
share.
give us a call. We're more than willing to come at any time.
There we go.
Thanks very much.
All right. And to our listeners, we're going to pause and take a break, and we'll come back. And let's pay homage to Mr. John and have some open line. And who knows, what scent, what bait we can make up, whether we throw the line with the barb hooked or not. What we're going to catch. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab. Blood test, x-ray and mammogram, all of that is MedLab. Affordable fees and friendly service, a full professional team. MedLab is always comfortable, MedLab is always clean. For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Call 949-7331 and ask about MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
At Subway, we caramel a lot about our customers, so we decided to give you 2 treats in one with the new Caramel Apple Cookie. Enjoy cinnamon apples, caramel bits, and salted caramel crunch baked in, and topped with a drizzle of caramel-flavored icing. Gooey, crunchy, and yummy. Complete your Subway sandwich, pizza, or salad with the delicious Caramel Apple Cookie or any other cookie flavor and dessert, available for a limited time at all Subway locations. Subway, eat fresh.
Families are like branches on a tree. We grow in different directions, yet our roots remain deeply intertwined as one. Savannah Pharmacy, your neighborhood pharmacy, has remained stable, strong, and deeply rooted in the community. The past 2 years have been very difficult, but they have taught all of us the value of family and embracing our loved ones. This 2022, Savannah Pharmacy encourages everyone to get in touch with your roots, embrace your heritage, show some extra love to your neighbor, and make the year a memorable one. Time is precious. Cherish it and those you love. Savannah Pharmacy, always just around the corner with everything your family needs and convenient opening hours, including Sundays and holidays. Savannah Pharmacy. For more information, call 946-3336 or WhatsApp your Savannah Pharmacy prescription to 929-5045.
Let's keep working together to protect our community by practicing social distancing, by wearing a mask, by washing our hands or using hand sanitizer, and by getting your booster. These simple actions save lives. Let's keep working together. For more information on COVID-19, visit www.gov.ky/coronavirus.
Until February 1st, CUC's subcontractors will be conducting tree trimming between 9 a.m. and 2:30 p.m. from Frank Sound Road to the Queens Highway. Motorists should exercise caution due to temporary lane blockages. Landowners, it is your responsibility to maintain the vegetation on your properties to avoid future tree trimming costs, but are reminded not to trim vegetation within 10 feet of power lines. For more information, contact 949-5200 or email service@cuc.ky.
The Overseas Government Scholarship deadline for the 2022-2023 academic year is Monday, 31st January. To apply for an overseas government scholarship or learn more about the various scholarship programs before the deadline, please visit the recently upgraded scholarship application portal at www.moescholarships.gov.ky or email the Scholarship Secretariat Unit at scholarships@gov.ky.
We give you honor and praise, adoration and glory.
Radio Cayman.
Praise time.
Praise Him, praise Him. Come and let's praise the Lord. Come and let's praise the Lord. Praise Him in the morning and in the evening.
Praise time in the morning.
Praise Him, praise Him.
Weekdays 6 to 6:30 a.m.
Radio Cayman, waking you up.
Rock my soul in the blues of my favorite. Rock my soul in the blues of my favorite.
Praise time.
I know He cares. He'll always be there. Oh, yeah. Praise Him, praise Him, praise Him.
advertised time.
Set your clock for 6 a.m. or you will miss it.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Noon. Welcome back and thanks for joining us. And we're going to have some open line now to take us out of the program and into the direct discussions with our listeners as we open the phone lines and have you chat about anything and everything that you want to talk about. 949-8037, option 1. 949-6990, option 2. Toll free with the compliments of Flow as option 3. 1-800-534-TALK. 1-800-534-8255. And then you can have another option. You can WhatsApp it, 925-3261. Here's an even, added option. You can call Miss Susan personally at 916. No, she says, no, don't call her on that number. So try us on any number. And if you're not sure what it is, call your friend and ask him. And if he doesn't know, well, you should say you should know these things, you know everything else. But we are serious and inviting you to ensure that we have this understanding of how important, almost incumbent upon us, if our democracy is to be championed and preserved, that we celebrate openly and actively engage and participate in making comments relative to what is happening and what is not happening. If you look at some of the discussions globally in the supposedly healthy democracies, many people are of the view from comments being made that this authoritarian sort of leadership or style that we're seeing, this totalitarian approach, it seems not only to be gaining increasing traction, but accepted by the populace and these democracies. Maybe I'll share more with you on that following a news report on Al Jazeera not long ago. But let's go to the phones, huh? Hey, welcome, good afternoon. Thank you for calling.
Sterling Dwayne.
Young lady, good afternoon. How are you?
I am well.
Happy New Year to you, Mom.
Same to you. Same to you, my friend.
Thank you.
Something that I wanted to speak about that is probably not something that would occupy the most people's minds, but it's something that really bugs me, and I think maybe once before I called about it too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's to do with our cemeteries in the Cayman Islands.
Mm-hmm.
The way that the vaults and the graves are being constructed these days. So many, there's too many too close together. I mean, I watched a funeral over the weekend, and it was really pitiful how many graves had to be walked over before they could get that loved one to their final resting place. And it was actually in the Bordentown Cemetery, the new Bordentown Cemetery, where for some reason it seems like they couldn't get very far into the ground, so you're having like 3 and 4 feet of the vault above ground. And it was really sad to see, well, some of the people, or 1 or 2 of the bearers, didn't even seem able, really, a little bit delicate, and trying to get up that high and then move the casket down about another 4 vaults before it got to that one. And I'm wondering if they couldn't be designed just a little more civilly. Like, if they were done in blocks of 4. Blocks of 4 with an opening on the 4 sides, then you would not have to go over any one ever, because you could access each one from the side once they leave that opening. And not only is it disrespectful, I think it can actually hurt someone, because if the weight isn't distributed evenly and you're trying to get up, sometimes it can cause back, leg injuries. But more than anything, to me, it's because it's so disrespectful. Right. And this particular one on the last weekend really it just upset me, and I think there's such an easy solution. You know, they're going to talk about land space. We don't have enough.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like we're moving into the swamps now, putting cemeteries in the swamps. So just you get a little bit more swampland then, and just make it that we can make the vaults in blocks of 4 to make when someone is, you know, that's your final. We talk about paying our final respect.
Right.
And putting a person in their final resting place, which for me, I hope that's not my final resting place. But from the earthly point of view, you would say that's your final resting place, paying your final respects. Let's be a little bit more respectful in doing that. And I know it's not in your remit.
No, but thank you for sharing that. If you have a minute, as you were talking, there are a couple of individuals who are also weighing in on the same topic. If you have a quick second, I wouldn't mind sharing with you and our listeners.
I don't mind. I have time to.
Okay, but thank you. One listener, and this we had got something similar the other day from someone else, and I think it's worth repeating that respect or lack thereof sometimes that's being displayed for our beloved, you know, departed, isn't as evident as it once was, right? So individuals saying that the practice, it seems like, has become commonplace, that people are going into the graveyards and removing the flowers that we put out for particular occasions.
Oh, I've heard about that too, and that is beyond disrespectful. That is,
yeah.
You know, hideous. I just can't imagine. Anyway, yes,
right.
I've heard about that. Mm-hmm.
And so maybe in this discussion we can kind of see how if that's a practice that somehow is immediately discontinued. And I say remove in case people are mistaken. You know, stealing them, taking them. All right.
Taking them,
yeah. And then the other comment from someone on your point about how we build in our graves, I was trying to, you know, look at it this way. You know, in some places we build, and instead of having just one grave in the ground or a little bit elevated because of the water table, could we do like how they have it in other places where it's, you know, 4 or 6 high by 4 or X, you know, wide, so that there are sections, you know, maybe a family buys a plot, and kind of like how you build high-rise housing, you know, 3 stories, 50 stories, whatever it is that we're going to allow. Could we do something similarly, you know, for our graves?
Well, that idea doesn't bother me at all. Except I think it would require change in laws in Cayman, because there was something in Cayman, which that law is being broken as it is, but I think somewhere in the law you're supposed to be 6 feet below the ground.
Right.
But I am seeing vaults now that I know 4 feet of it are above the ground. But I know what you're saying about the high-rise graves. I don't have a problem with that. My problem is walking over, stepping.
I'm with you.
You know,
I'm with you.
On others. But if they, since they claim that we have such a serious land shortage, if we need to go high-rise with apartment buildings and hotels, well, maybe we go high-rise with the graves too.
Yeah.
Anything other than standing up, walking over, you know, I don't like that.
I mean, if and I don't wish to, as you are, equally trying our very best to be respectful and sensitive to people, but we attend funerals to support, you know, our friends, family. We're there to show our love and our respect. And we watch the pallbearers, everybody trying to be, you know, as considerate of their existing graves, even the unoccupied graves, right? By not stepping. But sometimes you got to shimmer and maneuver around, and we've watched people, you know, slip and lose their footing. And not only is that for them an absolute sign of disrespect, because here they are laying to rest, you know, the mortal remains of this person, and they don't want to be insensitive. So maybe if we consider the layout as you have shared, or employ other strategies, it might help us, you know, with the limited land mass that we have. It may help us to be more respectful and considerate. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. Huh?
Yeah, okay. So many more topics that are on my mind, but I'll just leave it with that one for right now. Okay?
Well, bite-sized chunks maybe leaves it to be more memorable. But blessings to you and have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you very much, my dear, and you too.
Thank you. Amen. Well, you might have guessed, but Miss Susan is back, so timer switch is near to hand. A break to take and more calls to feel as we invite you to be a part of our discussion. Stay tuned for Talk Today.
You see how hard it's raining?
Yeah, and I don't have time to fight traffic and get my lunch from Subway. I have so much work to do.
Why don't you order Subway by using the Let's Eat or Bento app? Save time, stay dry, and get your sandwich fast.
I never thought of that. Great idea. I'm going to order now.
Order me a veggie pizza while you're at it.
And a cookie platter for the office.
Too busy at work or home? Is the rainy weather stopping you from dining out? Order your favorite Subway sandwich, wrap, or pizza through the Let's Eat or Bento app with fast and reliable delivery. Subway, eat fresh.
For medical lab services in Cayman, go straight to MedLab.
For a full range of medical services, pleasant, clean and comfortable environment, no long lines and affordable fees, visit MedLab at the Smith Road Plaza. Open Monday to Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. and half day on Saturdays. Call 949-7331 to make your appointment.
For medical lab services in Cayman, MedLab.
Ask our professional team about the benefits of cutting-edge technology with MedLab's new state-of-the-art digital mammogram machine.
This is how we wake you up in the morning. Praise time on Radio Cayman.
Are you ready? Here we go. Set. I feel like running, skip it, run it. Feel like skip it.
Praise time.
Jesus in the morning.
I will. So send me, Lord. I will go.
Weekday mornings from 6 until 6:30.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Hey, good afternoon and welcome back, and thanks for sharing with us. 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255 is the toll-free call with the compliments of Flo. Or you can WhatsApp 925-3261 and share your thoughts. Let us know, what are your thoughts in relation to the caller's last comment, and that sort of elicited the response of, let's look at how we build to agree, with how we, stacking them. We design cities and the like to utilize the available land in the most efficient, effective way, and to move about it. We can see the grid design with the blocks and how the streets will run. Well, perhaps when we think of designing subdivisions, for instance, or the layout of buildings, maybe with the greatest of respect and consideration, we consider doing something similarly for our graves, the vaults that we build. I know that no one is talking, to the point where you have one grave in the ground and people consciously being buried on each other. But if you build it, and sufficiently and securely and respectfully and responsibly, lay our remains in those spaces, we know that they exist in other places. Is it something that we should consider here, not just because of the limited land space, the demand that is there now, but the idea that we need to be better stewards of what we have? So, is that something that you think would make sense? Is there an improvement to that you can offer to assist us? Well, certainly want to hear from you. And as a people, if we become more constructively engaged in the governance, the management of our country, relative to the laws that are proposed and amended, relative to the policies that are developed and implemented, then we need to be actively engaged, not leave it only to them, whether them, by definition, are the ones we elect or appoint. They probably would welcome the help. And even if they realize it, what they say, takes two hands to clap. A friend sent something earlier that reminds us in Ecclesiastes that, two are always better than one. So if we can have multiple hands working in tandem, together, genuinely looking for a positive and sustainable outcome, would it not be better? And then yesterday's discussion has really, really been encouraging relative to the efforts of the farming sector and the increasing numbers of us who are not just complementing our dinner tables and supplementing our incomes and the like by eating what we grow and growing what we eat. I had a distinct privilege earlier to see an operation that is remarkable of what the genius is in our people, the level of industriousness, the level of commitment. The notion that you should strategize and focus and commit. Put your money where your mouth is, they say. Shows what we can do. Imagine now if we are supportive of each other, encouraging. Take, for instance, the budding entrepreneur who opens up a particular business. Can we buy, or the products from that business? Maybe it's a service that's being provided. Can we support it? Knowing that we expect, high quality service and value for money. Now, if that is our approach in our community, if that is the ethos in our society, it's going to be so much better for us today and forever. But if we're begrudgeful and jealous and other words that we probably will refrain from using now and would rather buy an inferior product and pay more for it because we get it elsewhere than to support our own, well, we need to move away from that. That has been alleged that seems to be the small island, the small community mentality. Well, let us not be that here in this country, because we are better than that. We are supportive of each other. We are encouraging. We expect, higher and higher standards. And as we raise the bar, we reward the effort. We recognize the sacrifice, and that encourages us to always continually improve. But we also take time to celebrate. A good friend reminded me earlier that in some societies, they understand the value of having enough. Some societies make do. Other societies chase, continually more and more and more, and never have enough. And there are those of us who appreciate that it doesn't matter, how we get to the dinner table, whether we walk or whether we're chauffeured. The idea is that we are seated and so assembled. We break bread and we make not just good company and conversation, but we genuinely commit to making it better for those assembled and for others who may come after, or for whom our actions will impact. Well, our headline news at 2 is, but a mere few seconds away. We're going to pause and take our news break. As we return, the phone lines remain open. 1-800-534-8255 or 949-8037 or 949-6990 as we invite you to share your thoughts with us. So please stay tuned for Talk Today.
Continuing the Caymanian tradition.
Let Cora keep my ground so clean.
The heart and soul of the Cayman people. Thank you for keeping the culture alive.
Let's read the news every day. From East End to Georgetown, down into West Bay.
Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
Today's biggest news.
Radio Cayman.
Your voice, your choice.
Local, regional, international. This is Headlines from Radio Cayman's newsroom.
Today's biggest news.
Meals on Wheels is hosting its annual Change for Change coin drive on January 28th and 29th with volunteers stationed across the island. Organizers are currently looking for 300 volunteers to help them over the 2 days, and you can register by logging on to mealsonwheels.ky. All funds raised will go towards community efforts to end senior hunger. In international news, even as the Omicron variant sweeps around the world, public health officials have noted that in most cases, the number of COVID patients in hospitals remains significantly lower than during previous pandemic surges. That's not the case in the U.S., however, where the number of patients with the coronavirus currently in hospital has reached record numbers. According to data from the Department of Health and Human Services in the U.S., 145,982 people were in the hospital with the virus on January 11th. Surpassing a previous record set in January 2021. And the Coachella Valley Music and Arts Festival is planning to return after a 2-year hiatus and has announced a star-studded lineup. Billie Eilish, Harry Styles, and Kanye West will headline the annual event, currently scheduled to be held in April at the Empire Polo Club in Indio, California. The announcement comes days after another music festival released its 2022 lineup. Those are your latest headlines. I'm Shanda Gallego.
For the latest in news and information,
follow Radio Cayman on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Download the Radio Cayman app or log on to our website, radiocayman.gov.ky. Country classics.
One night of love don't make up for 6 nights alone.
No one could steer me right, but Mama tried. Mama tried. You're cheating hard. You load 16 tons. What do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. I'm a honky-tonk man.
Country classics.
She's a good-hearted woman in love with a good time tonight. On a Sunday morning sidewalk.
If you enjoy classic country music, come hang out with Radio Cayman this Saturday, 3:30 to 6 p.m.
I'm so lonesome I could cry. I'd love to wake up in your arms tomorrow, but I'm so afraid of losing you again.
This Saturday afternoon, following American Country Countdown, 3:30 to 6 on Radio Cayman.
Country classics.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Good afternoon, welcome back, and thanks for sharing with us. 949-8037, 1-800-534-TALK. That's 1-800-534-8255. And share your thoughts with us. Or WhatsApp 925-3261. Some of you may have heard on Radio Cayman's news as we continue to lead and bringing out the information to the public. Not just in a very objective, impartial, professional manner, but timely. And sometimes, if it was other markets, it would say, breaking news, as it were. The government's announcement, as it were, and the political opposition's sort of response to the consideration of the issuance of a bond for $400 million over, 3 decades, a 30-year bond. And since it's been announced, a number have shared a perspective. Well, why is the government doing this, and is the opposition just being the opposition, as it were? The government in the waiting, playing politics. Is it what they're saying sensible? Is it something that we should be concerned about? Is it again just politics? As the opposition has asked, well, if this was announced prior, if this isn't something that was discussed in the Finance Committee or any of the other sort of public utterances, whether in Parliament or otherwise, what's the impetus now? What's the urgency, according to the opposition, for doing it now? What is the use that these funds would be, taking the country further and further into debt, according to the opposition, and not just handicapping potentially future governments, but subjecting future generations to increased debt. Now, for many, they could easily come to the government's defense and chastise the opposition for its comments. Others will draw alongside and say, hey, that's why we have the opposition to sort of keep things in check and voice things. But what is your thought? Is it that maybe it shouldn't be 400 million, maybe it should be 4 billion, or it maybe should not be at all? Well, 949-8037 as we go to our phones, or 1-800-534-8255, or you can WhatsApp 925-3261 and invite you to share your thoughts with us as we engage you by allowing us to hear your perspective and understand increasingly the importance of thoughts as our listeners and our wider community have to share more publicly. 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255, or WhatsApp 925-3261. Sometimes it's interesting to see where we are with respect to what we're doing, and the notion that we have many who have increasingly been looking with the sense of understanding exactly what is before the country relative to government's finances. They look at it objectively. They look at it with a view that, this is their personal money that's being expended. And with that, a few of you have asked the question, and maybe let me relate to listeners. The question was simply, when it comes to the government's ability, the elected government of the day, and its ability to borrow money, to even spend the available money, whether it's recurrent revenue or existing borrowings. Just similarly, one individual shared, like the UK's ability through this FFR to be able to dictate, the maximum borrowings that would be allowed, subject to, the available country's finances, its GDP and the like, and what that debt service would come to. Should that be in play, or why should the UK have that sort of overriding ability to say yes or no? And then, if it is or isn't, should that be that the country, through its populace, through its constitution, through its, laws, should that now extend that any government would have to get not just the Parliament's approval, whether in Finance Committee or otherwise, but the country's approval to commit the country to significant debt over an extended period? Now, when I was listening to that discussion, as it was suggested, there was a counter. Well, we're handicapping, the elected people. Do we not have confidence in them? And the person's retort was, well, wait a minute. We're not talking about whether they're competent or whether we have confidence in them. We're talking about things that could potentially affect and impact all of us, whether good or bad. So do you not want to have a more direct say in how that happens? There are some who shared, well, that's not the approach of a democracy that looks towards more of a capitalist society that's bordering on other types of democracies, the social democrats of some jurisdictions, or even worse, was the counter. But what is your thought? Should a government be able, just because it has the numbers, just because it can, because the laws allow it to do so, the finances of the day indicate that it is affordable? Should a country be able to be committed to large amounts over extended periods? Now, one of the individuals said, well, if you go back to financial crisis not long ago in particular, there are many people who, because of their low interest rate, maybe their particular earnings and debt service at that time, they were able to buy a lot of house. They were able to borrow a lot of money. things changed, and all of a sudden they found themselves unable to afford. Now they've not having that level of income. Maybe their employment was terminated. Maybe they were, had to take a paycheck. Maybe the businesses that they were in were no longer, making the kind of profits. So that extra money that they thought they were making over time, or in bonuses, or profit sharing, or dividends on the shares, or what have you, wasn't there. So what is your perspective? Do we say to the government, hey, you know what, you guys are in charge, you do what needs to be done, come next election, we like it, we put you back in. If we don't, we take you out. But what is done is done. You can't unring the bell. Or should it be, as some have said, hey, if you want to borrow beyond this amount, it may be 40 million, it may be 400 million, whatever that sum is, then you need to get the country's approval. And if the answer is yes, well, how is that approval given? Is it through a referendum? Is it through some other sort of trigger? Now, we keep thinking about, not reinventing the wheel. We keep thinking about, whether we trust those in power. We keep asking, are we handicapping by not giving the authority, the autonomy that's needed? But at the end of the day, is it that sometimes many hands do make light work. The more people weighing in on something, the chances are you may have a better decision. Some would say, well, too many cooks spoil the broth. So the lesser the number, the more efficient and effective the decision. There may be arguments to support, either. But what is your perspective? Because at the end of the day, we're all, in this together, but not necessarily to the same, standing and impact. It's interesting to see sometimes when something goes, in a direction other than what was proposed or sold, that not everybody comes out being affected in the same way. 949-8037, 949-8037. Toll free to compliments of Flow at 1-800-534-8255 or WhatsApp 925-3261. And then when we look at the government, how many of us actually rely on the reports in the media to inform us? How many of us rely on our friends and family to tell us what's going on? And how many of us, even when we know exactly, what is happening because we've been reliably informed, actually can appreciate and properly, consider what is it that the government of the day is doing? How much is its budget? Where is the budget being spent, for instance? Why is the government undertaking this particular project or not, continuing this policy? Or why is it this new thing? At the end of the day, are we of the view that the elected part of government should be so intimately involved with the overall running of government that they are not able to function? Some would say, well, that's not what it's about there. Help the policy and then let the technocrats do the implementation. Some would accuse others of micromanaging, even if they're part of the technical side of things. They may not delegate sufficiently for whatever reason. The management style of that individual, the belief that the underlings don't necessarily have the skill set to do it, the lack of confidence in the manager and the people's ability below to execute. For some people, because their foot is to the fire, they want to make sure that they hand, a hole in the flame. They want to be held accountable, so therefore they're going to ensure that it's done. You want it done right, you do it yourself, they say. Well, maybe not always. 8949-8037, 1-800-534-8255 or WhatsApp 925-3261 and share your thoughts with us. Final break, and when we come back, more talk today.
Explore your history. Explore your land. Explore your sister islands. The ultimate staycation experience. Your culture, your freedom. The land that time forgot isn't gone. It's your sister islands.
Discover all that our sister islands have to offer.
At Subway, we caramel a lot about our customers, so we decided to give you 2 treats in one with the new Caramel Apple Cookie. Enjoy cinnamon apples, caramel bits, and salted caramel crunch baked in, and topped with a drizzle of caramel-flavored icing. Gooey, crunchy, and yummy. Complete your Subway sandwich, pizza, or salad with the delicious Caramel Apple Cookie or any other cookie flavor and dessert, available for limited time at all Subway locations. Subway, eat fresh.
King Sports Center takes pride in being more than just an ordinary gymnasium. For 14 years, their multi-purpose facility has been providing the community with a variety of sporting, recreational, and relaxation activities. King Sports Center has a bowling alley, lounge bar, multi-purpose rooms, powerhouse gym, rock climbing wall, bungee jumping, a 10,000 square foot rink, and so much more. For more information on the variety of services, call their friendly staff today at 946-5464 or email kings@candw.ky or visit www.kingsportscenter.com. King Sports Center, your one-stop shop for fitness, recreation, and relaxation.
The Tuesday and Thursday edition of The Business Buzz is brought to you by Cayman Medical Supplies, providing quality pharmaceuticals, medical supplies, and consumer products to healthcare providers, retailers, and ultimately the patients at a reasonable rate in a friendly, caring, and timely manner. Cayman Medical Supplies is located at number 93 Smith Road, Windward Center. Telephone 949-6211.
Talk today. But I do have some questions. Talk today.
Cayman Islands' foremost listeners participation program.
Talk today.
Because there are more questions than answers.
What the public is saying.
Waiting to take your calls right now. Sterling Dwayne Ebanks.
Afternoon, welcome back, and thanks for joining us. 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255, or WhatsApp 925-3261. A quick message just off here during the break. The person says, either we elect them and give them the view, how the view that they are elected to do the job, or we step in the gap because we think we can do it better. Well, it was a quick break, and the person was sharing that perhaps it's that sense that we have within ourselves that we can do better than others. We don't have the level of trust. I think there's merit in what a person is saying. Now, like I said, it wasn't an extended break, but when I asked, other jurisdictions, there are different oversight committees in legislatures across other countries that share in sort of looking at what was done after the fact. The person said, they have a larger population and maybe greater resources. Appreciate the particular position that person would be in relative to public views. But picking up on what was said, is that part of the challenge that we have, that we don't see the larger number participating? Is it a distrust because we know who they are, or we think we know, so we draw inferences? Or is it that we believe that democracy would be better served if there were greater input by larger numbers? Well, 949-8037, 1-800-534-8255. Let's go to the phones. Good afternoon. Welcome. Thanks for calling. Hello. Good afternoon. Yeah. Hello. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Hey, welcome. Finally we can. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. I just wasn't sure for a moment there.
Yes, likewise.
Good afternoon to you. Good afternoon to you and your esteemed listeners. I just thought it's a good day to give you a shout, since yesterday there was the official opening of the Grand Court.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And I thought it was very well organized, actually, because I watched quite a bit of it. Like in the way they blended in the pre-recorded material as well as the live material. I thought it was very good.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I found it very interesting that despite some of the challenges that the judiciary is facing, I saw the Chief Justice, Mr. Anthony Smelly, talking about how the judiciary is supposed to deliver justice without fear or favor and without ill will. When I think about how much ill will I have experienced in my matter, I thought that was a little bit, I want to be polite here, I was a little bit surprising. I would have loved really to see people talking about the standards of the judiciary in such a way that those of us who have gone through the system can be able to say, look, what they are saying is right. But with me, I found it totally hypocritical that they should be talking about that when there are so many obvious cases, mine as well as others included, when the judiciary has been found wanting. But talking about that, my appeal against a decision of the Grand Court in my appeal matter has been set now for the 31st of August 2021.
22 or 21?
22, sorry.
Okay. Someone would have checked today, January 31st, 2021.
Well, you listen very carefully, Dwayne. I know that.
Sometimes I do.
Yeah, 31st August 2022. So on that day, what will be heard will be my case against the governor as well as my case against Mr. Justice Ian Kawali and the PA. Like they've been consolidated together and they will be heard. And we will. If we don't get the answer soon after that case, because it is an application really for leave to appeal. Anyway, we should know whether UK case law, according to them, overrides Cayman legislation, which is one of the areas of concern. We will also know whether a judge who acts maliciously, which is my allegation in that case against Mr. Ian Kawali, whether he can be sued in a civil court and be held personally liable. A third one is also whether if you take 42 months to deliver a reserved judgment, whether that amounts to a violation of the right of somebody to have a case heard within a reasonable time. Like I've said on a call before to you, the practice direction in the Cayman Islands is that judgments which are reserved must be delivered within 3 months. Mine took 42 months, which is like 14 times longer than it should take. So those are three of the issues, but altogether in all there are like 13 issues that they have to determine. And today as I was, I'm in touch with a lot of other OTs as well. Somebody sent me an article from the Royal Gazette in Bermuda. They are having a case there which is very interesting. It was relating to the Commission of Inquiry, which was held there. And what they have found is that in that case, all the judges in Bermuda are apparently compromised. Because according to the allegation of the people who are involved, they are saying no local judge should hear that case because everybody is compromised. And so the litigants are asking if the governor can appoint a temporary judge from outside the Caribbean. They've said not just outside Bermuda. They've just said they want a judge from outside the Caribbean. And I found that article very interesting because it is more or less the same thing that I've been going through. It has been very difficult for any judge to be objective. Why? Because I am suing a judge. Do you see? And so they've been making these rulings which they are making, which really are contrary to law, and they don't want to go into the facts. They are acting as if they are lawyers for the judge. They are acting as if they are witnesses. Why? Because there is nobody really who can be objective, which is the point I had made to the governor. In fact, I have sent the governor that article. And in the same case also, a judge had prevented a litigant in person. He wanted to appear by Zoom twice, and the judge said you can't appear by Zoom. That also has become an issue. Why do you go ahead to decide a case without giving somebody a right to appear by Zoom if they can't travel in this day and age? Which is also one of my problems with Mr. Justice Kawali. I asked for a Zoom hearing practically 8 weeks in writing in advance, and somehow he didn't give me a hearing. And later on, when I investigated, I found out actually that I had asked for it 5 months before, in January, during a Zoom hearing that we had. So how do you give me a Zoom hearing and then you deny me a Zoom hearing later on? So the parallels to me were very interesting. So I just hope that really on August the 31st, we can. I will argue the case myself, but I am getting ready in case it doesn't go my way I'm getting ready to take it to the Privy Council. I've already talked to a lot of people so that just in case it winds up I'm not successful, I think it has to go to the Privy Council so that it can be determined. I think that would be very good. Oh, by the way, the other thing before I get off Dwayne.
Yeah.
I have any time when you go to court and you are getting this far, you should always continue trying to see if there is a way in which you can resolve the matter.
Right.
So, yeah, what I've told, I've written a letter. It is a formal letter. I've told the judge, I said, Judge, I am happy to discontinue the case against you personally and your personal assistant if the government can admit that they took too long to decide my matter. They don't have to admit the other things, although I can prove them. If they just admit that it took too long, they violated my rights, we can have a settlement based on that. And since it is really the same facts, to me that would be good enough. And then I can withdraw the case against him. And then also another condition I would want in that settlement is that the government must undertake that as soon as possible, they must approve the rules for complaints against judges, because that will allow other people to benefit, those people who I know also have suffered from the system.
Right.
And so if the judge agrees to that, then I will drop the case against him, but he has to persuade the government to be able to admit that, and then I'll be happy to abandon the case. But otherwise, it is going to the Privy Council.
Right. If I might ask, though, and as I listen to you, and I say this, as it will be, apply to you directly, but it's probably across the board in most things. There are many of us in society that will hear something, but because it doesn't affect us directly, we dismiss it. Or we'll hear it repeatedly and go, oh, they're on with that again, and we'll dismiss it. As you've shared, and I'm hopeful it's not just me listening, but it's the fact that you seem to have gone to great pains to be as respectful and responsible about everything, not just that which is sub judice, but just about the parties themselves, so that it's not only not defamatory or inflammatory, it gives people a chance to look at the principle and not the personalities and the players involved. With that in mind, are we at risk in a society of ignoring potentially the importance of things, not just because of the precedent that they may create, but the perception that they may have from others within our jurisdiction and outside when we look at things that are unfolding, whether it's in the judiciary, whether it's in other areas? Is that something why a case like this is so important that it gets ventilated properly and adjudicated fairly, so that that precedent and perception are utmost paramount? Sorry, caller?
This is absolutely important because, as you say, perception is reality. So perception is very important. And the importance of that is because although I'm an attorney at law, but I'm pursuing this as a personal lawsuit, right?
Right.
And I am not one of those like lawyers from the UK who or who occupy a certain position in a society where they can walk into any courtroom and somebody says, "Oh, this is Mr. X, Mr. Y." I believe I'm a respectable lawyer, but I don't occupy that profile of those people who are in the law firm.
That perception.
So yeah, exactly. So in a sense, you look at me as an ordinary litigant in person, because one of the important things that justice has to ensure that is seen is that even when, as an individual, you walk into a court and you prosecute your own case, you must be treated the same way like anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe like you must be treated in the same way they treat the lawyer on the other side. And to me, I've felt throughout this matter that I've never been treated just like as a respectable litigant who had a good case supported by expert reports and so on. But I was always being looked at in terms of, there's a big law firm on the other side. They don't want the case to go forward. And so they are always trying to find an excuse as to why it should not go forward. I mean, I have a tape, Dwayne, I have a tape where a judge, when they held this hearing in my absence, the judge was asking the lawyer on the other side, asking him, what is Mr. Simamba's argument on this point? How can a judge be asking the other side what my argument on a particular point is? when I am available there to be joined by Zoom so that I can argue my own case. You know, I mean, I also have evidence that actually the judge told the other side that I don't plan to give him an oral hearing anyway. All that evidence that I have it. But at the end of the day, I keep losing each round, although I'm quite sure that ultimately I suspect that I'll win the war. But I think it's very, very important. That's what I think that's the point you're trying to emphasize. It is very important that there should be a certain perception about the way people are dealt with. But then ultimately, you see, we should not only rely on the integrity of the judges. There is no system which operates only on integrity. Systems operate on the basis of accountability, meaning that if somebody doesn't live up to that integrity, there must be a way in which they are brought to be accountable. That's where the need for an effective complaint procedure against judges is very important. The need for the existence of the rules is very important. The need for some of these inquiries, when they reach a certain stage, to become public the way they are in other countries. That's the only way you hold people accountable. Otherwise, you can have all these ceremonies like they had yesterday, which was a total charade in terms of what I know about myself and other people. It is like they were playing to the gallery, but they know very well that in the society, they are making certain people suffer who should not be suffering.
All right. Well, you know, I commend your perseverance and your persistence, and hopefully as people look at it, they see it in its importance. But thank you for keeping us apprised of as it transpires. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Have a wonderful afternoon. And to the rest of our listeners, we invite you to continue to tune in and be a part of it. Please use Radio Cayman's forum as the most effective way to share your voice, so as we invite others to participate in what is probably one of the healthiest democracies. So let's make sure that we do that. That service and sacrifice of our ancestors in the wars, and even the public stands as their latest petition for the right to vote, as their society assembled not long ago in the 70s in the Georgetown Town Hall to demonstrate, and you can look up the word, to ensure that they champion our democracy has to be something that's continued in a civil, respectable, responsible way. Now, Mr. Art makes those discussions together with Dr. Steve in the mornings when he joins in, and others to continue to, inform, educate many of us. So let's join in tomorrow for the record. And then, of course, tomorrow, right after the midday news, there'll be more talk today. Evangelist Brother Joey Ebanks will be our guest for a bit. Hey, we're going to make this a good day because you were part of it. Until tomorrow, be blessed.
Talk Today is brought to you by Subway, open 24 hours in Countryside, Anderson Square in Georgetown, and Centennial Towers in West Bay. And by the Ministry of District Administration, Tourism and Transport. Explore your history, explore your land, explore your sister islands. MedLab in Smith Road Plaza, your complete medical laboratory solution. Call 949-7331. And Savannah Pharmacy in Countryside Shopping Village, convenient opening hours including Sundays and holidays.
Shaken yet standing firm.
I was not built to break.
This is Radio Cayman in the Cayman Islands.
After all that talk, sit back, relax.